Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 27 of the Uncut Exception mini sessions. So, tonight will be another short stream, I think, and I'll be sharing about feature policies and how to use them in our web applications. So, sharing my screen. So feature policies, what are feature policies? So feature policies, it's like a browser mechanism that allows web applications to selectively enable or disable certain browser features. So examples of these browser features could be like the camera or what else, like geolocation, ambient light sensors, all these other cool web APIs that can be enabled or disabled through feature policies. So why would you want to do that? I could. There are several reasons why. Probably the most common reason is to deny access to sensitive browser APIs. For example, um, an example of like a sensitive web API is like geolocation because you can get like a person's coordinates through this API, and also maybe like the camera or the microphone and other powerful APIs here. So depending on like the site that you're building, you might want to like guarantee that those features are enabled and no JavaScript code can like call these APIs. So that's one usage for feature policies. And another one would be so as the web like evolves, some APIs get like deprecated and becomes bad practice. So we can also use feature policies to make sure that we are not using those API. For example, for many years now, it's encouraged. I mean, it's discouraged to use document that right. But using feature policies, we can make sure that it's really not being used and it won't work. Third reason would be the opposite of the previous reason, which is to encourage um, best practices. So currently, some of these would be like oversized images, wherein you could define a policy where images can not be so much bigger than their containing element. Otherwise, it's a waste of bandwidth. Or other thing would be where was that? Okay, unsized media where like images that don't have explicit dimensions will just be rendered through using a fallback dimension, something like that. Because now it's encouraged that, or like it's best practice to really specify the size or the dimensions of our images, as well as serve an image with the appropriate dimensions depending on where it is going to be rendered. So there's a lot of different feature policies available. Some of them, and for sure in the future, more will be added to the web. Some of them are still new and not like supported anywhere. Some of them are already available. Some of them are like behind feature flags. So just take a look at some of those. So for so yes, so now we know why feature policies are like where we can use it, why it's useful, some of its use cases. Let's take a look at how to actually use them. So feature policy is an HTTP response header, which looks like this. So a feature policy, which is the header name, and its value, something like this. So the directive is like the name of the feature that we want to enable or disable. So that would be accelerometer or ambient light sensor, etc. And then allow list is whether we want to allow or deny this specific browser feature. So for example, so for the allow list, we can provide, we can pass in asterisk, which is it's really allowed in this page regardless of the URL, or like the origin itself is only for like same origin scripts, not or like pages, not cross-origin pages. SRC, we'll talk about later. None will like completely disable that browser feature, and others. So here are other, so MDN also lists their own available list of feature policies. So let's just take a look. So let's see it in action. So here I have a demo page. Let me. Okay, so here I have a demo page. So for this demo, we'll just be using like the camera API and the geolocation API. So here's the camera. So it's a very like cool feature. It allows web pages to access the video stream from like the camera. And then here's geolocation, which allows our web pages to get like the person's like approximate coordinates. So these are really powerful APIs and really useful when used like properly. But if we have like good reason to, we can disable access to these APIs, which is what we will do now. So remember, feature policies, it's a response header. So we need to modify that. We need to, okay, yeah, before we go that, so here's the code, just like regular JavaScript that calls get user media and geolocation API, so nothing special there. So as I was saying, feature policies are response header, so we need to configure that on like our server that serves our application to actually include that feature policy response header in our responses. So in my case, I'm serving my application using like a serve npm package, which is serve, which is just an npm package that serves like directories as static sites. So it's what I'm using, but the way you configure it depends on how you're actually serving your web application. So it could be through Nginx. So you have to provide a feature policy response header from there. It could also be like directly from a Node application or Django Python application. Then you have to specify the feature policy response header from there. So in my case, I'm using serve, and serve has a config file which I will use. Oops. So this will be my config file. So this is a very like serve specific config, but the idea is for all responses in all like URLs, we add a header called feature policy, and then we pass in our actual feature policy. So for a start, let's start disabling both APIs. So that would be geolocation, which is our directive or the browser API that we want to enable or disable, and then our allow list, which is whether we want to allow this API or not. So if you want to modify like multiple features at once, we can provide them in the same header value but separated with a semicolon. So here we have camera, we also disable the camera. So let's save and start our app again. So let's refresh the page, and just to check, we can go to DevTools Network tab, refresh the page, and see in the headers tab of our request, we see that our feature policy response header is included. So let's see. So currently, according to our feature policy, geolocation API and camera API should be disabled or not usable by the page. So let's try click on the camera. Boom. As you can see, we don't have access to the camera anymore. The browser denies access to the camera and just throws an error. Same for geolocation. For some reason, geolocation doesn't throw an error, but it's really not giving us the our current coordinates. That means the browser is blocking or denying access to these APIs, which is cool. So yeah, by default, if you don't pass a feature policy response header, access to these APIs are allowed. But if you want, as a developer, we can opt in to these feature policies if you want to disable certain browser features, or like not really disable, but like prevent or deny access to these um, APIs from your web application. So let's try. So none disables um, the API completely. We can also pass like an asterisk, which means that it's allowed for these APIs are allowed for the page and all other iframes embedded in the page. We can also pass self, which means the API is only allowed for like same origin pages. For example, if you have an iframe that you embed on the page, geolocation and camera will only be enabled if the URL of that iframe is the same as the parent page or the top level page. So yeah. Okay, so enough about this. Other Yes, so basically this is how we specify a feature policy. It's a response header, configure it depending on how your web app is served. Could be like through Nginx or other similar software, or directly from your backend, etc. So yes, another way that we can specify feature policies is when we're using it with iframes. So iframes allows us to embed other pages within our page, right? So let's say I want to embed google.com. So let's say like that. But, or like it could be any site that we want to embed. But yes, I want to embed google.com, but I don't want this site to access my user's geolocation, for example, because I don't really trust this site, let's just say. I don't really trust what they do with the geolocation. So what we can do is we can maybe make it self, for example, so that only same origin like pages are allowed. But alternatively, in case we want to customize or like provide specific feature policies for specific iframes, we can pass the allow attribute in our iframes. So let me just format this. So allow. So the allow attribute in the iframe element allows us to like provide custom feature policies for this embedded page. So the format is very similar to the feature policy response header. So we can just do something like, let me just copy paste this. So let's say for this iframe, I want to disable geolocation, but I want to allow the camera, for example. So that's how we customize the policies for each iframe. So iframes sort of inherit the feature policies of their top level or their parent page. So we don't really have to provide this anymore. So, but if in case there are specified in both, the more restrictive policy is followed. So for example, in the iframe, camera is allowed, but here camera is not allowed, then camera won't be allowed. So I won't run this because I'm just using a random URL. But yes, this is how we can specify feature policies for our iframes. And another thing, did I save that? Okay. So another thing. So yes, so far feature policies, we've seen how to use it as response headers and also using the iframes allow attribute. There's also like company JavaScript API for it, and it's accessible through document that feature policy. And yes, so it's easier. So we can use this in our JavaScript code to do feature detection to check if specific APIs are available or allowed for this page. For example, in our demo app, we can maybe disable the camera button if the camera API is not allowed for this page. So we can check that by checking allows feature camera. And you can see it says false because in our feature policy, we said none, which will deny access to the camera API. To see the list of all feature policies supported by your browser, we can run feature policy that allowed features. So this will list all of them. So yeah, there's MIDI or like the USB API, magnetometer, picture-in-picture, so much more. It depends on your app which ones you want to like deny access to. And what else? Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Feature policies, it's our response header, or you can also pass. You can also use the attribute. I mean the allow attribute of the iframe, and also there's a JavaScript API which we can use to do like feature detection and other stuff. So resources, MDN. Um, there's a page there which shows like the syntax of the feature policy header, as well as like the values for the allow list and stuff. And there's also like a nice page that I found called featurepolicy.info. Um, Basically, it just lists a bunch of feature policies. Let's say, for example, camera, and then explains like what does this feature policy do, as well as provide like a demo um, section within the page. So and also like the browsers that support it. So that's feature policy. Probably not like very often used like in our applications, but yeah, in case you find a use for it at some point, then you now know that feature policies exist. So I think that's pretty much it for this. As I said, very short stream. So thank you for watching. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you next Saturday. Bye, everyone, and thank you.